All right, welcome back to another episode of Rock M Reacts, live from Furrow Field, following Mizzou's 34-12 win over South Carolina, moving on to 7-1 on the season, 4-1, now entering a much-needed bye week to rest and recover for a team that's been pretty banged up throughout this season. But we'll start with what went down today. First and foremost, I think, at least for me personally, one of the biggest takeaways I take from this game was the offensive line play. I would argue this was probably their most complete performance of the year. A, in pass protection, Brady Cook wasn't sacked once today. B, Cody Schrader averaged over 5 yards a carry. He had a phenomenal day, and it was in large part because he wasn't getting touched till he got to the second level. So just how did you guys see, we'll start with you, Quentin. How did you see the offensive line kind of translate to the offensive success today? And just, do you think this is a sign that they are really coming together?
I was just so impressed with how easy running the ball looked. There were a handful of runs where it just looked so easy for Cody Schrader to hit a hole. And that's happened a few times this season, but it was happening more consistently this game than I think any other game this season. And there have only been a few times in recent Mizzou football memory where the offense had like over 400 yards in a game, but on the ground more than 50% of the production came from the rushing attack. That's been pretty rare. So I was incredibly impressed with, both the touchdowns, like there was a wide open hole. It wasn't necessarily Cody Schrader fighting to get room. He said in the postgame press conference he kind of knew when it got to the line of scrimmage that he had daylight ahead. So I was very, very impressed.
Yeah, just kind of echoing off of you guys, anytime you have 0 sacks and average about 5.4 yards per pop, that is just outstanding job. And, Drinkwitz and all of them, they gave credit to where it's due with this offensive line. But they've definitely came a long way since last year, especially because the offensive line was probably a huge question mark along with quarterback coming into the season. And it's just great to see the growth there. On those touchdown runs, you saw Delgado and Foster just creating huge holes for Schrader to run through. And, he was just he had nothing to do but go towards daylight into the end zone. But it was probably one of the most complete offensive line performance, them winning in the trenches. Schrader said they take pride in that, winning there. And it was on display today here for homecoming, which was great. For this unit to do.
They only had one penalty, correct? And that was a false start.
And then they bring a ref. They bring a ref or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what Drinkwitz said this week to adjust to the penalty issues offensive line. They brought in real refs like they would during fall camp. Apparently that made a pretty big impact, only the one flag today. Kind of on the flip side of that, we saw Brady Cook, maybe not his best game of the season per se, but still a solid performance because in large part he had so much time. You flip that, he was asked post-game about, if you're in Spencer Rattler's situation today, how are you doing? And he's like, I have no idea, because the Mizzou defense was all over Spencer Rattler, in his lap pretty much every single snap. It was you saw a lot of stunning, a lot of 5-6 man pressures, not too much all-out blitzes, but a lot just bringing one linebacker, one safety. The South Carolina offensive line didn't seem like they knew how to handle that. 6 sacks in the day, 8 tackles for loss. Just y'all's thoughts on kind of how you handled Spencer Rattler today. Xavier Legette went down early in the game. That had an impact, yes. But handling Rattler and Mario Anderson, who are both pretty hot coming into this game, and then just overall the defense performance kind of working back from that insane pass rush today to the coverage.
I don't know how long the theme of a gold rush has gone back with Mizzou homecoming, but there was an actual gold rush today, like on the football field.
Yep.
And I think the best front sevens and defenses I see in general are the ones where it feels like there are more than 11 players on the field. You're seeing at the NFL level, I think the Cleveland Browns, it feels like there are more than 11 people on the field just because there seems to be a Cleveland Brown everywhere the ball carrier is. And that's certainly what it felt like tonight. I remember you saying Rattler got a clean throw off, I think sometime in the third quarter, and you were like, that's the most amount of time he's had to throw all day long. And it was like a few seconds. So I was just very impressed with pretty much everybody along the defensive line. Darius Robinson had an incredible sack where he basically shed 3 blockers en route to a sack. They were generating constant pressure on Spencer Rattler. He had very little, if anywhere, to go at all for most of the night. So Blake Baker prides himself on havoc. We've been talking about havoc as a key to success for Mizzou's defense for a long time, especially over the past couple of years with the way Blake Baker wants to do defense, the way he wants to send extra guys. They got home tonight. They got home a lot, and it made playing offense a lot easier. It lessened the second half struggles of the offense a little bit because obviously they were struggling to move the ball down the field, but the defense continued to pick up stop after stop. So, again, very impressive stuff.
Yep, and you got to love it, especially as a football savant. To complement the offensive line domination, they wrapped that up with a good defensive front seven. They played lights out, and you just like when your team just dominates in the trenches. You see with the 49ers, you see with a lot of good just football teams overall that go and win a lot of games and going and win championships. And Spencer Rattler, yes, he did not have any time at all to throw the football. He often had to scramble. He was just not comfortable, and you could just tell that in the way he was playing. That was the depth of the Mizzou's defensive line. I mean, multiple guys got sacks. They got back there for, 4 to 6 times? Yeah. And even in the run game as well, they held them to, 2 yards per carry. They had probably, I really counted, they had 2 long runs that whole game. I think the running back was down here by the 1 yard line. He had a long run. The Spencer Rattler scrambled for another long one. But outside of that, it was it. Even the interior defensive line, they came up to play, just stuffing the run in the middle. They couldn't do anything. And when you're able to do that in the game of football, you're going to win a lot of games, and your opposition's not going to be comfortable at all and get into a groove or nothing. So just a great day by both sides of the trenches, offensive, defensive lines, in my opinion.
And I think it's in part, you saw Joe Moore get a sack today. It was one of the notable transfers of the offseason. Hasn't really showed up that much recently, but he was playing significant snaps today. I think you saw another great thing that I think that Baker has such a luxury with right now for the style of defense he wants to play is you have such great blitzing defensive backs and linebackers that are so, I mean, Tyron Hopper is one, obviously, but Carlisle, Dalen Carnell, even KD and Dennis Raker are dangerous coming off blitzes. I mean, they're going back there to take people's heads off. So that was really impressive as well. Also impressive, Jaden throwing out words like savant tonight, pretty good stuff. But
from Dennis Gates,
yes, from Gates, who if you did not see, led the marching Mizzou band out in the field today, which was pretty impressive as well. With this shameless plug, Mizzou set to tip off November 6th against Arkansas Pine Bluff, week of the Tennessee game for football. But another thing I wanted to point out with the defense today, because when the second half and they got a little bit of momentum. You had the Luke Barr kind of dropped punt. That really hurt things, and South Carolina seemed like they were getting rolling. They would threaten into the red zone, yes, but they only got 4 field goals today. They didn't score a single touchdown. How much does that speak on kind of what this defense is able to do? I mean, bend, don't break is kind of a thing that's thrown around a lot, and I don't think that's necessarily what this defense is, but it's what was needed today. When your offense was struggling and your back was against the wall, and Carolina, if they convert even 2 of those field goals into touchdowns, this is a very tight game in the fourth quarter. What did you see from how they played in the red zone, and is this a strength of this defense is playing in the red zone?
I saw really good tackling.
Mm-hmm.
I was very pleased with the tackling today, especially I think it was South Carolina's last red zone possession. J.C. Carlisle was one-on-one with the receiver in the flat. Boom, brought it down easy. Just simple stuff like that. When you have to make plays out in space, it's more valuable when you're around the goal line where one miss could mean 6. And that's exactly what happened. I did not see a ton of missed tackles today. I thought I hit a wall. It's past my bedtime. But tackling I thought was very, very on point.
Yeah, it almost seemed like the defense, they were going to take it personally today if South Carolina scored a touchdown, frankly. I mean, you've seen some of the players were talking post-game saying it's not a rivalry 5 straight. There's an emotional tie in this game as well, too. There certainly is between these sides. So.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the Big Ten West. This isn't Iowa, Minnesota. If you want to win football games, if you want to compete, you got to score touchdowns. And for this defense not to allow a single touchdown, especially against a team that put up 39 points, or like 400-some yards of total offense against Florida, that was real impressive to me. And then bending, not breaking. Sometimes you do need that in football. It came up huge because you were just like, if South Carolina scores here, then we're talking a whole bunch of other stuff. For the rest of the game. But like you said, good tackling was there in the red zone. Just them stopping drives, that also gives momentum because when you leave with 3 points instead of 7, I mean, for South Carolina, you're probably just like, dang, we've been down here, they were down here 3 times. I think they hit a 50-yard field goal. We were down here 3 times. We can't get anything going. That just takes away from the confidence of that offense. And then on Mizzou's side, just them getting stops, that also builds confidence for them. So that was real key in this game, and holding a team to 12 points instead of 28 points, making this a game, that's really huge.
And I would imagine Shane Beamer post-game, that is the number one thing he will be saying, is if we got touchdowns instead of field goals, we would have been in this game, potentially have won it. But that is how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Now the main thing Mizzou fans want to do is look ahead, because you're sitting at 7-1. You got a much-needed bye week to rest up, get kind of everything situated before a nice final 4-game stretch. That includes, one could argue, probably the top 3 teams in the SEC, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, as well as Arkansas in the rivalry game. Georgia's next in Athens. Mizzou's currently sits tied for second in the East. Georgia and Florida will meet in Jacksonville next weekend. That will determine a lot about kind of who the team to beat is going to be in the East, frankly. But looking ahead, a trip to Athens, it normally seems incredibly daunting. Just absolutely no chance anybody goes in there and wins. We'll see how Georgia looks next week without Brock Bowers, but this Mizzou team playing at this level right now looks like they are capable of at least making that a game and should be favored in probably the other 3 games it has down the stretch. Give me a quick little just outlook projection for how this team might fare in these final 4 weeks. Well, what they need to accomplish in the bye week too, and then what it will come down to beating Georgia and dethroning them in Athens.
Said you're looking ahead to Georgia.
Yeah.
Stop.
Bye
Stop
week.
it. You need to stop.
Got to beat the bye week first.
Beat the bye week. Enjoy the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
That goes for us too. That goes for us too.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But if we have to talk about Georgia now,
We do. That's what the media wants. That's what the fans want.
fine, I'll give it to you. How to beat Georgia? Well, considering that Mizzou over the past 2.5 calendar years is one of 3 teams to give Georgia any type of trouble in the second half, along with Ohio State and Alabama. They've been there before. They know how to do it. Obviously, it was here at Faurot Field. Being in Athens is a whole different animal. It's a whole different beast, especially considering the potential stakes of the SEC East being on the line, which I'm going to be completely honest, was not a point in the mountain that I thought Mizzou would reach. But you know what?
They climbed it.
They could get there. Excuse me. Mizzou could get there. But how to beat Georgia if they don't have Brock Bowers? That's kind of a big deal. There's no really other way to put it. He's been their safety net. He's been their go-to. The way they use him, and it's not one single way. It's a lot of different ways. We've seen him on jet sweeps. We've seen him on fade balls. We've seen him kind of everywhere. He's been their version of Deebo Samuel. So I think without him, they're going to have to adjust, and obviously we're going to see how they look against another solid team in Florida. But my thing with Mizzou is that they're not afraid of anybody.
No.
That really matters. That matters a lot. And obviously they're confident. And when you're confident and you're not really afraid of anything, good things tend to happen. And even if they roll into Athens and they come out with a close competitive loss, that's a huge step forward.
Yeah, I mean, oh well, lost to Georgia, you more than likely potentially finish 10-2. It's still a wildly successful season. So I worry that Mizzou fans might be at the point now where, one loss and they're like, oh, what happened? This team was supposed to be the great one. It's a long season. This program is still it's emerging out. Dennis Gates talks about his basketball program is still in the infant stages. Drinkwitz's program is emerging out of those infant stages right now, but they're still not out there at the level they want to be. So you have to. Their patience is still key with this team. But Jaden, your thoughts on where they might stack up in the East as the season comes to a close?
I mean, really, in 2 weeks when you go to Athens, Georgia, you got to bring the kitchen sink. I mean, you got to bring everything, because if I'm going to be realistic, that is probably the SEC East semifinal game, in my opinion. These are the 2 best teams right now. And you look at Missouri's schedule, you got Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas. Well, Arkansas, that's a whole different story. I got a lot to say about Arkansas right now, but those games, winnable. This game, you look at it, and you're like, you got to go all the way to Georgia. You're gonna have a ton of confidence, and I'll be real. It was daunting when you went in there in 2013. It seemed daunting when you came out with the win. But that Missouri team was confident, and coming off a 5-7 season that year, that was kind of a something to prove team too, with a lot at stake, and they went in there and did it. So, like last year, that game was close, even with Mizzou not having the offense they had, not having the offensive line they had right now, all of that. That game was still close, and, they're going to be riding there with confidence. So that game is going to be real interesting to see. It's probably going to be one of the biggest games in the SEC this year, and, it's just going to be tough. You don't know what's going to happen. They're probably not going to have Brock Bowers, most likely, and that's their biggest offensive weapon, like you guys said. So just know in 2 weeks, that's really the game. Like, we looked at Kansas State earlier this year. That was the big game that was going to define a lot, and ended up doing it. Well, this is really the game where you're going to be like, do you want to be in Atlanta in December, possibly go to New Year's Six Bowl, which Mizzou probably, they're on track to probably go to New Year's Six Bowl. But this is really the game that's, the biggest game probably in a while, I would say.
And frankly, to be classified as an elite team, you shouldn't have just one game in a season that is your marquee matchup. You should be playing 4 or 5 games that feel like your season is on the line. That's how college football, this is what Bama does every single season. They play 4 or 5 games where everything's on the line, and they usually win those games. That being said, could be college game day in Athens, potentially, depending on how UGA does next week. Best believe that Drinkwitz and the staff will be watching every single millisecond of that game, probably multiple times over, to see how Georgia runs its offense without Bowers and just what they look like coming out of that game. It will be interesting, but Mizzou fans, regardless, Your team sits at 7-1, 4-1 in conference play going into the bye week. A resounding success up to this point. Moving forward, every single goal that they laid out in front of themselves before the season started is still in front of them. And 8 weeks into the season, that is all that you can ask for. So that'll wrap it up for another episode of Rock 'Em Reacts. We will not be in Athens more than likely. Jaden will be in Georgia, so potentially maybe in Athens, but probably not covering it. So Rock 'Em Reacts will probably return either after the Georgia game or definitely after the Tennessee game following that. But Quentin, Jaden, and Parker signing off from a dark and happy Furrow Field.
Don't want to know this week.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.